Hello, this is Jay Mitchell with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Rand Paul endorses Trump 3 months after Election Day from FoxNews.com by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the Moderate Politics subreddit. And yeah, I personally, if I were Rand Paul, I wouldn't endorse Trump, especially after Election Day. But if he wants to endorse Trump, I do think, you have the argument that he's doing some libertarian policies like the Doge stuff and also privatizing USPS and freeing Ross Ulbricht. But I personally think he should have kept more of his independence streak going and not endorsed him, especially since the election's already over and, there's no reason to really endorse him because, he's already been elected. It's not like you're voting. It's not like you're voting to remove him from office. You don't really need to endorse him, if you ask me. But if he wants to justify endorsing him, I think he should. He's definitely one of the most libertarian members of the Senate, I would say. And yeah, people give him a lot of shit, but I do respect how he always is against increased spending and was against foreign wars and was really one of the only ones to really stand up to Dr. Fauci during COVID. So yeah, Reddit would give him a lot of shit because he doesn't pass all the DNC purity test or libertarian purity test, which Reddit libertarian purity test might as well be libertarian socialist purity test at this point. But I definitely do think he's still good, even if I personally disagree with his decision to endorse Trump. Then we have Philadelphia Eagles reported White House snub sparks MAGA anger from Newsweek.com by Donald Key. And yeah, I do think the Eagles since have said they're going to go to the White House, but Reddit, they're always looking to go after do Orange Man bad whenever they can. So that's why the story was trending all over Reddit because Trump didn't have them over to the White House the last time they won. But yeah. I personally, if I were them, I'd go, if only just to piss off Reddit, because Reddit is the most obnoxious, insufferable, progressive shit libs that the world has seen at this point. So, yeah, I don't really like Trump, but the fact that he pisses off Redditors is probably one of the best things about him. Then we have Elon Musk admits email to government workers was a ruse from independent.co.uk by Ragnar OKXD, and that's a cross post from the DeFranco subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't know what all the fuss over the email was. I think it's just saying, he said to the federal government workers, what have you done over the past week? And no one can name anything they did because they're all just jerking themselves off on Reddit probably. But yeah, if he wants to send an email to all the government workers, I think he should be able to. I think anyone should be able to email whoever they want to. And yeah, it just goes to show you how worthless a lot of federal government workers are. They're pretty much all Redditors just jerking themselves off while pretending they're this great hero of democracy. Well, in reality, they are some of the biggest losers the world has ever seen. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have U.S. joins Russia to vote against UN resolution condemning Russia's war against Ukraine from CNN.com, hosted by Swan Panky Dan. And yeah, I personally do think Russia is ultimately responsible for the war, but I definitely think the U.S. is kind of responsible as well. U.S. foreign policy, they astroturfed the Orange Revolution in 2004, trying to bring Ukraine into its orbit. Then 2014, they astroturfed the Euro-Moldovan Revolution, and that brought Ukraine into its orbit. So now, I personally think if you think if you think the Ukraine war is anything but a Russia-U.S. proxy war, I think you've been propagandized by either by the mainstream media or Reddit, which is pretty much mainstream media at this point. And yeah, I personally don't really care for the invasion at all. But it's obviously just a proxy war, and Ukraine is just the U.S. puppet state. And yeah, that's why I personally think the U.S. needs to get out of there, because they really caused the war when they were astroturfing color revolutions out there. And yeah, that's why, and you're not allowed to criticize it, or you're considered a Russian asset. In the 1990s, they went, if you said, the U.S. shouldn't be buying Yugoslavia, they said, you must be with Milosevic. Then in 2000s, if you said, the U.S. shouldn't be invading Afghanistan or Iraq. They would say, oh, you're with Saddam and bin Laden. Then in 2010s, you would say, oh, the U.S. shouldn't be involved in Syria or Libya. They'd say you're with Gaddafi and Assad. And now, if you say the U.S. shouldn't be involved in Ukraine, it's you're with Putin. So it's just a method for them to shut down any dissent whatsoever and any criticism of themselves because and U.S. foreign policy. So that's why you can't just if they want to say that they should be able to, but it's just a method they use to shut down any debate whatsoever, and that's why I'm not having any of it. Then we have new FBI director Dan Bongino. The only thing that matters is power. Power, that is all that matters. A system of checks and balances. Haha, that's a good one. From Donald Key, and that's crosspost from the Damn That's Interesting subreddit. And yeah, I personally would agree with Bongino there. Probably not for the same reason. Probably not for the same reasons that he says it. But power is ultimately all that matters. The system of checks and balances has clearly never worked, and whoever's in a position of power can do whatever they want pretty much and not be held accountable for it because the state has a legal monopoly on the use of force. So in reality, I would say that I would agree with him there. Power is all that matters, and I saw Mike Mouse go tweet recently. The government is essentially just who's ever in charge says it is, and yeah, just to show you, the Constitution, they always say, oh, what about the Constitution? The Constitution's been violated countless times throughout history. They had the Trail of Tears, the suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War, the Office of Censorship, and the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the Patriot Act, pretty much the entirety of the COVID-19 pandemic. It doesn't really matter what's in the Constitution. What matters is as Bongino says, what those in positions of power are willing to justify. So all that matters really is power. I would agree with him there. And I personally don't think it's that libertarian, but that's sad that we live in a very unlibertarian world where the government ultimately has the power to do what it wants to because it has the monopoly on the legal use of force. Then we have fun fact from FunKale321, and they said, Donald Trump is a magician. He made people who did not care about the price of anything for 4 years suddenly care about the price of everything in 3 weeks. And I'd agree with that. They didn't care about the Reddit shitlibs didn't care about the price of anything for pretty much all of Biden's term. But then Trump's in there, and they're like, has he lowered the price of eggs yet? It just goes to show you that they only hold the president to account when he's a member of the out group rather than the in group, and that's pretty much all the social media at this point. It's all in group bad, out group, or in group good, out group bad, and yeah, that's my thoughts there. Then we are so backwards from Helpful Feeding, and that's a crosspost from the Black People Twitter subreddit. It's a tweet from Dorico L. Baker, who said, oh, just call us the fucking N-word already, because firing a highly qualified black man to replace him with a white guy so underqualified they needed a waiver is the definition of racism. Fuck you. And that was him quote tweeting Benny Johnson breaking. President Trump fires Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown. Woke is dead. And yeah, I personally think if Trump wants to fire whoever wants to fire, he should be able to, because ultimately, whoever's in a position of power ultimately does have the power to fire whatever they're able to. But that being said, increasingly, any dissent at all, they'll try and say racist, sexist, ableist, etc. The Mad Libs will use all those terms. They'll always say, "Oh, if you dissent at all, you're literally Hitler." And eventually, you just don't even care anymore. If Trump wanted to fire this guy because he wasn't a Trump loyalist, he should have been able to. If he wanted to fire him because he was black, he should have been able to. Ultimately, Trump should be able to fire. Trump can just fire whatever he wants to, since he's in the position of authority right now, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, but if you want to think he was fired because he was black, that's fine. But eventually you can't just frame any dissent at all as racism. It's like if you disagreed with Obama or any of his political positions whatsoever, they say, "Oh, you must be a racist Klan member," and eventually that just stops working, because look at there are black conservatives as well. You can't. It's not like they say when you ever criticize Clarence Thomas, they don't say, "Oh, you're a racist Klan member." They say you're right, because when you're a black conservative, suddenly it doesn't count as you're not black anymore. You're Uncle Tom, and that just goes to show you how they've weaponized identity politics and the narrative in their favor, and that's why people are tired of it. and yeah, and that's why I think one of the big reasons Trump beat Kamala was because Kamala had nothing. She had nothing, but she was black and a woman, and people are just tired of identity politics. And yeah, Republicans practice identity politics. I would say it's too to some extent, but we need to stop with all the you're racist, sexist, Islamophobic, homophobic, etc., etc. It's getting really old at this point. Then we have Pastor Paula White, director of the White House Faith Office, is challenging you to give her money so that God can bless you. You can give her a sacrificial offering of $133, $52, or $414. And that's from Donald Key, across from the Political Humor subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't care for Paula White and the prosperity gospel of give me money, but that's pretty much all the U.S. society and culture is at this point. It's just all give me money. It's all just people just want money to live, and yeah, increasingly, I'm pretty. I like capitalism, but I definitely do think you can make the argument that our society has become over hyperly capitalistic because everyone's just trying to constantly sell you something all the time. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Republicans love their deficits from Donald Key, and that's crosswords from the centrist subreddit. It's a tweet from Congressman Thomas Massey. If the Republican budget passes, the deficit gets worse, not better. And I'd agree with them. I remember the user who posted this used to say, oh, Thomas Massey's a third-rate grandstander, but since he's criticizing his own party at this point, it's good because, it just goes to show you, Reddit really has no values other than Trump bad, Republicans bad. When you criticize Trump or the Republicans, it doesn't matter who you are. They agree. They will say that you're right and pat you on the back. If Hitler came back and said Trump bad, Republicans bad, Reddit would probably suddenly love him. But yeah, personally, I don't think Thomas Massey is Hitler. That's not where the argument getting at. I'm just saying that Reddit just loves saying Republicans bad, Trump's bad, Trump's bad. But yeah, I definitely would agree here. Republicans, just like Democrats, don't care about fiscal responsibility at all, even if they might market themselves as being for that. And yeah, I definitely do think if the Republican Party was if Thomas Massey was the baseline for the Republican Party rather than someone like, Lindsey Graham, I probably would have made the switch from Libertarian to Republican over by now. Then we have Musk's Starlink gets FAA contract, raising new conflict of interest concerns from CNN.com from previous L3. I mean, it's previous I3, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely do think that's kind of a conflict of interest. But the government's always doing conflict of interest. When Biden was in there, they were funneling money to progressive NGOs through stuff like USAID. But now, since the in group since the out group is doing it rather than the in group, it's the worst thing ever. Then we have Yay Communism from Endless Exploration, and that's a crosspost from the Cuba subreddit. Cuban actress Melissa Cruz says that if you are overwhelmed by the blackouts, do not protest or rebel against those responsible for your misfortunes. She offers the solution, and it is simply that your relatives in exile buy you a portable generator. And yeah, it just goes to show you that whenever Cuba's brought up, the woke will always say, "Oh, but my Cuban, it's all because of that the U.S. has the Cuban embargo." And yeah, whenever communism socially fails, it's always that's not real communism, that's not real socialism, or it's due to an external factor. And that just goes to show you how they don't really care about their system of government, but because when it fails, they'll just find an excuse. And if people use that excuse for Nazi, it's not like people on the right say, "Oh, Nazi Germany wasn't real fascism. Benito Mussolini Italy wasn't real fascism." No, it's exclusively their side of the argument because that they think it might not have worked the past 100 times, but it will surely work this time. Then we have Republican Representative Thomas Massey just attacked a GOP budget proposal from Donald Key, and that's crosspost from the for quantitative subreddit. And yeah, as I said earlier, I'm glad he's standing up to the GOP and their stupid budget. Just like he's usually standing up to the Dem stupid budget over the past couple of years. But regardless, Reddit only likes it because he's criticizing his own party. If he criticized the Democrats' budget for reading the same stupid shit, Reddit would say, he's just another GQP Republican. Then we have gun-toting Trump supporters betrayed by updated gun control provisions during Trump administration from Gen Z Gingy. and that's a cross post from the World News Video subreddit. And yeah, that was from a few years ago when he said take the guns first, due process second after the Las Vegas shooting. But yeah, Trump, like the rest of him, people will love to say Trump is the pro-gun president, but when he says this, suddenly he's anti-gun. It's just they'll find any way to whatsoever they can to criticize him. And yeah, it's like if he says cut the military budget, suddenly the military budget's a good thing. Well, it's what Putin wants to cut the military budget. And yeah, I personally don't care for Trump. I think he's just another par for the course gun grabber Democrat from 2009. But ultimately, Reddit only just exists to be Orange Man bad at this point for the vast majority of subreddits. Then we have U.S. government department to tie funding to marriage and birth rates. Let me get that phone. U.S. government to tie funding to marriage and birth. Here it is again. U.S. government to tie funding to marriage and birth rates. I wonder which groups think they're trying to exclude from Newsweek.com by Baton13. And yeah, ultimately, I do think government should be is ultimately able to tie funding whatever they want to. But I definitely do think there is a lower marriage rate among the black community because a lot of black fathers are generally seen as abandoning their families and being absent. But yeah, if they want to tie it to marriage and birth rates, that's fine. But people will probably think that's racist because they think everything's racist. Then we have golden green cards, more special perks for the wealthy in lieu of addressing commoners' issues from CH Relax, and that's crossovers from the FOMOI subreddit. Trump, we're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We got to put a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges, plus it's going to be citizenship, and most people will be coming to our country. And yeah, ultimately, I don't think you should just be buying U.S. citizenship, but if the government does think that's something that it can sell, ultimately, as I said earlier, we live in a world where everything's very capitalistic. So if the government wants to justify that, I think it should be able to. And yeah, it definitely would make it more so that there's a financial incentive for people to come here. There is still a financial incentive to come here, but there's a financial incentive to gaining citizenship rather than just staying undocumented or illegal all the time. Then we have educator dragged from Idaho Town Hall on orders of ex-LA Sheriff's deputy collecting $150,000 in disability from LAMag.com by Baton13, and they added maybe a happy outcome to this. And yeah, I personally don't really care for any sheriff's deputy collecting that much in disability, but ultimately the government will throw money at whoever it wants to, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, and I don't really think they should have dragged the educator out of the town hall either because they were being peaceful. They might even being kind of on the more insufferable side, but as long as you're being peaceful, you shouldn't be forced out of any place. But ultimately, the government has the legal monopoly and force to justify whatever it wants to, as I said many times. Then we have House Republicans at the brakes on town halls after blowback over Trump's cuts from NBCNews.com by Donald Key. That's another Orange Man bad post. We're going to start wrapping it up. Then we have Stephen Feinberg, Donald Trump's nominee for Deputy Defense Secretary, was asked if Russia invaded Ukraine from Swamp Yankee Dan. That's crossovers from the Ukraine subreddit. And he said, and he didn't say Russia invaded Ukraine, but they did say that they're moving the tanks and troops over the border, I think. But yeah, Russia did invade Ukraine. And he should be able to say that. But with that being said, if the war is coming to a close, you gotta start harping on it so much, I think, and you gotta acknowledge that the U.S. has a big responsibility since they were essentially turned Ukraine into a puppet state in order to get involved in a proxy war against Russia. And then finally, we have Trump to rely on forces that brought in power Russian presidential aid from Tom13, and that's a cross-post archive link to TAS, Russian news agency. And it said in its future policies, including those in the Russian track, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will rely on the commitments to the forces that brought into power rather than election pledges. Russian presidential aide Nikolai Patrushev told the Daily Correspondent in an interview. The election campaign is over, Patrushev noted. To achieve success in the election, Donald will rely on certain forces to which he has corresponding obligations. As a responsible person, he will be obliged to fulfill them. And yeah, this is just another, Trump's Russian asset. It's like the Democrats can't take any responsibility. They have to smear anyone who dissents at all as Russia. It's like in the South Park movie, the parents said, "Blame Canada." We don't we're not going to take responsibility. We're just going to blame Canada, and that's pretty much the modern Democrat position. It's only instead of blame Canada, it's blame Russia. And if you dissent at all, you are literally Vladimir Putin. And eventually, you just get tired of it, and you try and break up the circle jerk. And when you do that, they don't like that, and they downvote you. But regardless, you still have to do it anyway, because you can't let these insufferable jerks just control the narrative 100% of the time. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.